Hey folks, it's Corey again. In today's Power Apps Shorts, I'm going to cover how to change the default 24-hour date time field that you get with a form into a 12-hour format for your users, so that you can have your database still record the 24-hour format, but actually have the 12-hour format available for your users to select from. I use this a lot with SQL databases because I want to keep my 24-hour format in the table, but for my users, they want their 12-hour format. So what I have here today is a simple date time field. It's set up, it's a single table with a single column that just has this date time field in it. I'm going to dive right into it. There are probably parts here that if you're not sure how they work or you have questions, just let me know, and I'll try to answer those questions, or I'll try to reference you to another video that might cover it in more depth. But we're only going to use a couple of functions here, and we're just going to add a couple of things to this field, but you do need to be able to do a couple of things. First off, we need to actually unlock our field. So if I come up here and I unlock my field, that allows me to add more into this particular card. First thing I want to do is I want to add in the AM/PM component. So there's different ways to get here. I still use the insert, then insert my input, and I drop down. There's also that. So the first thing we want to do is get this AM/PM in here. Right now it's just a standard drop down field. I want to actually change my items to AM/PM because that's the selection that I want. And once I have that set up, I have that in there, so that's what's there for selections. If I hold down my Alt key, I can actually see that I have AM and PM as my selections. Now, since this is going to be not only a entry field, but also potentially an edit field, I want to be able to read back a 24-hour format into this, so that 100 hours is actually 1 p.m. So in order to do that, we need to make sure we convert our time frames so that we know what's supposed to go in here. So as a default, we're going to go ahead and change this. Instead of being a default of 1, we actually have a pretty easy if statement that we need to type in here. If you've never used an if statement, you should really get used to using them because you use them a lot throughout all kinds of things. But what we're going to do here is I'm actually going to type it out, and then I'll kind of break down what I was doing here. So I'm going to say if the hour of the parent default is less than 12, I want this to be AM. Otherwise, I want it to be PM. If the hour component of the parent default, now the parent is the card, and the card reads the value from the table. So if I read the hour value from the data in my table, if it's less than 12, I default this field to AM. Otherwise, I default it to PM. And so that's how we translate that back. So that's step 1. Pretty simple, pretty straightforward. Step 2 is to alter our hour field. Since we want this to be 12 hours, we no longer need the 24 that are here by default. Now, I generally will change this to 12 and then simply remove everything after 11. And since I get my cursor in the right place, we'll do that. And I just delete this off. I'm not really into retyping anything, so that'll actually work for me. If you want to put them in a different order, you can. This is the order I like because it starts at midnight and it works its way down. So we have our selections there. That's good. Now we also need to make a modification here for our default. Again, the default is for when we read back to the table. Now this one's going to use a little bit different formula that hopefully you're still familiar with the components of it. The first part is, again, we're going to utilize our if statement. Like I said, if you're not comfortable with ifs, you're going to need to get comfortable with them. But the second part we're going to pull in is actually something called the mod function. And if you're familiar with Excel, hopefully you're familiar with the mod function, because it really functions in the same manner as the one that's in Excel. So what we do here is we change, again, I switched over to the default, and I want to have my text because that's what we're doing, and I simply say, again, if, that's how we're going to start it off, the mod. So the mod, as you can see, it kind of describes what it does there. It allows you to take the number and divide it by a divisor and come up with the remainder. So we want the mod of this right here, our parent default. Again, that's reading the table itself and the hour component of it, and we're going to actually divide that by 12. So we want to divide that by 12. If that equals 0, and again, we're still within our if statement, if that equals 0, then we want 12. Otherwise, we actually want the mod of the hour of our parent default. We want the actual value that comes out of the mod. And then we have to have, go ahead and do that, close that out, divide that. So if we look at this here, what we have is if the mod of our parent default, so let's say it's 1 p.m. is what we're selecting, so that will be a 13 divided by 12 equals 0. No, because you have a remainder of 1. So instead what we want is we want that mod of 1, which would be this part here. Otherwise we would have a 12. So that's our mod component for this hour field. Now we're 2/3 of the way done. We actually only have one more component that we need to modify out there. And that's the actual updating component of the card itself. When you go and you save this particular value, if you're doing a new one, you want to be able to convert everything into its 24-hour format so that it presents itself properly for our SQL table. So in order to do that, we actually have to look at the update component of our card. And I'm going to go ahead and slide over to our update component. I don't have to do anything with my date because from a 24-hour to a 12-hour standpoint, the date doesn't change at all, so I can actually leave that there. The time, well, I'm going to have to do something with the hour value of my time. Notice that the time encapsulates both the hour and the minute component, but I still broke them apart because there's two parts within that one. So I'm going to have to do something with my hours in order to translate it properly. But my minutes will be fine as well because, again, from a 12-hour to a 24-hour, minutes are going to be the same. So we're really focused in right here on our hour component. And what do we have to do to our hour component? Well, we have to do pretty much the same thing that we had done in our previous step, which is make this update with our mods in order to get it populated incorrectly. And yes, I'm going to have errors because I have different names. This is the one that I originally made way back when. I actually got this from a blog. It was on the Power Apps blog out there. So my drop down, and the reason I needed to change that is because my drop down selected value if it equals PM. So what I'm looking at is this field here. I should have renamed it. I didn't. That's a big no-no in reality for me, but didn't do it. So all the rest of my names are actually the same, so it's not I don't have to change all that much. If you changed your field names, you would have to alter these to match the actual fields that you have listed here. But if we look at it, we have our date. Like I said, we didn't really have to change that. And then we look at our time, and we're saying if the drop down selected, if this value here is PM, then it's 12. Otherwise it's 0. Plus, we want the mod value of whatever our hour value selected is, so whatever this value is, divided by 12. Well, let's think about that for a second. So, if I have a PM, again, let's go with the 1 PM because it's easy to see, it's 13. So if we look at this, we have, it equals PM, so it would be 12. Now we need 12 plus what? 12 plus 13 divided by 12, again, the mod brings back the remainder, which is 1. So we're going to have the 12 plus the 1, which equals the 13. That creates our 24-hour format. We're basically just working, reverse engineering that step that we did in the hourly drop down here. And then we just want to, because we have our time component, add our minutes, and the 0 out here is the seconds. So really, that's how you do it. Those are all the formula pieces that you need. And any questions, comments, ideas for other ones that you want? I hope this helps somebody out there. Happy apping.